So one of my commenters wanted me to know that he believes that going back to our natural ways, which he considers a carnivore diet, will cure mental illness. Well, let's first decide what mental illness is. Having had worked in the field of mental health as a mental health case manager, I know that mental illness can be a lot of different things, including taking people's natural emotional states way out of context and deeming that this person or that person has a mental illness. For example, as everybody now is too aware of, I was very attracted to a young lady that had Asperger's. Well, Asperger's is a neurological condition. However, many of the people I worked with that had Asperger's were not really, they're nerds. They're nerdy, and they have social anxiety. Okay, that's what I gathered from most of the people I worked with that had Asperger's. I'm finding out it's more, there's a lot more going on inside, but really who's to say that's not going on inside everyone? And now to go further, what I want to point out is to claim that a carnivorous diet is our natural state of being is idiotic. Number one, most hunter-gatherers, their diets are made up of predominantly, go figure, plants. And more importantly, and I'm going to leave links to prove this, and I want people to follow my links so that they actually understand I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. This is the truth. This is what science says, and this is what observation says. This idea that somehow humans are some kind of this super predator is a lie. Yes, our intelligence has allowed us to bring down bigger prey, and we are omnivores. I'd want to be fair. I would say the same thing to anybody that said veganism is the natural state of humanity. Yes, I'm a vegan, but no, veganism is not the natural state of humanity. However, what one has to understand is neither is a carnivorous lifestyle. It's just not. That's not the truth, and it hasn't been the truth. And if you look at societies where they eat a predominantly carnivorous lifestyle, such as the Inuits, they have serious health concerns, despite what people have lied and said by cherry-picking data. Now, what's more important is there a way to help with mental illnesses? Yes, some of them. There are some illnesses that would be helped by going back to a better diet, but what's a natural diet? Orthomolecular psychiatry, which is a form of psychiatry that was created by Dr. Abram Hoffer of Canada, he has successfully treated schizophrenia, which is that's also thought to be a neurological disorder, not so much a mental illness. But having worked in mental health, what I will say is this. Aside for people with schizophrenia that have very obvious symptoms, sometimes that's a bullshit diagnosis too. I've met people with so-called schizophrenia, and again, how do you know what's really going on in that person's mind? And what does contribute to mental illness? That's what one needs to understand. Now, for example, he brought up my mental illness. Maybe it could cure my mental illness. I don't bring up what caused my mental illness. One, because I don't really know. But the theory is, over the years, trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma piled up, and it caused my brain to incur damage, okay? But that doesn't mean that's the same for everybody with PTSD, okay? Do I believe nutrition has helped my PTSD? Absolutely. So what are some of the traumas I dealt with? Well, I've had a whole hell of a lot of head injuries throughout my life, getting in fights. Number two, believe it or not, bullying. It is thought that bullying could contribute to this. And then, of course, witnessing my father's suicide, giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, getting his blood in my mouth, all that experience, which I never really put much stock into, and I still don't. I don't think that any one of those instances has caused that, and then being homeless and suffering hypothermia. But what people need to understand is, really, mental illness has existed forever. It's just like, for example, the oracle at Delphi was probably mentally ill. You have all these prophets and nonsense like that. They're mentally ill. If you don't believe they're mentally ill, if you take somebody from that time and put them in a modern context, you get somebody like Jim Jones. or David Koresh, who were clearly mentally ill. Okay, so when you take the person out of the context of thousands of years ago, when they become legendary, and put them in the modern context, they're mentally ill. So living in a naturalistic lifestyle did not prevent mental illness. But what causes mental illness? What is mental illness? That's another thing. It's very highly questionable. Do I believe people have problems? I don't like the term mental illness because I think too often it's used to basically take a personality trait or natural human emotions and take that and use it to stigmatize somebody. I believe there are people that have very delusional thinking. There are people that have very bad anxiety. There are people with debilitating mental health issues. But is that a mental illness? Is that, can you define a mental illness? If a mental illness could be clearly defined, a mental illness could be clearly treated. And I don't think going back to a meat-centered diet would help. Furthermore, with a lot of this carnivory nonsense, very few of these people participate in physical activity on a regular basis, which is also part of our natural lifestyle. How did we catch prey when we were hunter-gatherers? We stalked it, sometimes for days, and then we went after it and attacked it full force and brought it down with a group of other hunter-gatherers. And then we carried it back to the camp and then butchered it and these things. These are all things, none of this is done by modern hunter-gatherers. And if hunter-gatherers do participate in physical activity, it's usually some loopy bullshit like CrossFit, where there's no form or anything like that, and it's just looks like a frickin' seizure. And that's about all I have to say for this video, but please do follow the links. I mean, and there's going to be the Citizens Commission for Human Rights, which is a group loosely affiliated with the Church of Scientology, which is very much against the psychiatry, the psychiatric abuse. I think it would be great for people to watch them, especially the one about the DSM, because, to be honest, it's all voodoo. Now, there are probably real biological causes of some of these things. I don't go with, like, the Scientologists on that. I do believe there are probably biological causes to these things, but you're not going to find them by saying that going back to an all-meat diet, which humanity really never had an all-meat diet, you're not going to find the answer that way. And honestly, my mental illness would not be cured that way because I have been on a diet like that. I was on the paleo diet. I did follow a meat-centered, almost raw meat-centered diet, very undercooked meat. I got sick a couple times with parasites, but I did, and it was real paleo, not this all meat bullshit, but it was, it had a lot of vegetables, no grains, no beans, nothing like that, all vegetables, no butter, no dairy. It was just meat and veg. Your meat and two veg, as they say in England. I did that for a number of years. And was I in good shape? Yes, but that was more so due to the aggressive athletic protocol I followed. I was doing exercises with kettlebells. I was doing martial arts full-time, teaching martial arts. So, yeah, my physical aptitude probably had very little to do with the Paleolithic diet I was following, the so-called Paleolithic diet, because remember, it's bullshit, but it had less to do with that than it did the athletic protocol I was following. And I'm starting to follow a similar protocol now, and I'll get back in shape now, and I'll be healthier now on my vegan diet. And the fact is, eating small amounts of meat, and I'm going to leave a link to this, eating small amounts of meat does not contribute to a health condition. Okay, small amounts. However, eating large amounts of meat does contribute to a health condition, and there's no actual benefit for eating meat, period. That's what people are not understanding. That cannot be substituted. There's no benefit to eating meat or dairy that cannot be found in other foods. And that's the truth. And to think that we used to be these carnivorous super predators that magically evolved from vegetarian primates is absolutely insane. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. And to think that following a meat-centered diet will somehow heal mental illness when people can't even accurately define mental illness is idiotic.